This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. This is Dalia Fadl, City of Rancho Cordova. The city was a partner in the American River Basin Stormwater Resource Plan, and we've been part of this group for years now. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to collaborate on stormwater and other watershed issues. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dahlia. James Hoffler.
So yeah, my name is Jim Hoffler. Let me turn on the camera here, see if that works. I'm with Friends of Auburn Ravine, as the name would imply. Friends of Auburn Ravine, we do a lot of time looking out for the Auburn Ravine Creek, the whole watershed, the salmon and the people, et cetera, et cetera. And we also take an interest in Doty Ravine and the area upstream from there, Markham Ravine and so forth, and as well as Raccoon Creek. So our main focus is Auburn Ravine, but we also look out for the watersheds just north of there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Sarah?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Jones. I'm the Executive Director for the Placer Resource Conservation District. And I did attend a meeting a while back before COVID hit. I guess more recently came on as the Executive Director in November of 2019. Over the past year, our agency has increased our capacity with staffing. And so we'd like to be more involved with the American River Basin Collaborative on issues surrounding watershed health in Placer County. Thank you.
Great. Bob, you want to tell us?
Sure. My name is Bob Hollis, and I work with a lot of people on this call. I work with Cecile, and I've worked with Christine on Keep California Beautiful projects for about the last 10 or 12 years. I also work with Greg on his websites for Valley Foothill and Dry Creek, which we're going to be redesigning shortly. I work with the Laguna Creek Watershed Coalition on their website, and also Slough House RCD. I'm a former CSD president in El Dorado Hills, and I now live up in the mountains, just up above the American River on a mountain west of Tahoe. But I do mostly technology and social media for nonprofit environmental groups.
Great. Glad to have your help. Alta, you there?
Yes,
Who are you?
I'm Altatura. I'm president of Sacramento Area Creeks Council. I serve on the board of Valley Foothill Watersheds Collaborative as secretary, and I am also on the board of Laguna Creek Watershed Council, secretary for that nonprofit also. I'm a volunteer, and I have been leading the annual Sacramento County Creek Week, the countywide cleanup effort that we couldn't do in 2020 because of COVID. And our organization, Sacramento Area Creeks Council, is transitioning to a support organization for others who want to do cleanups. And so we are currently supporting some other community groups and nonprofits to help them with cleanups. I think that's we're mostly an outreach group, outreach and cleanup group.
Yeah, that's great. Mick, you're next.
Hi, I'm Mick Klassen. I'm a consulting environmental planner, do a lot of work with Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, and I'm here today because there's several items of interest to me on the agenda today. I may have to depart abruptly, so it's not because it's not a compelling topic when I do, but I hope to catch as much as I can. Thanks.
Great, good to have you. Esther?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Esther Tracy. I work for the Department of Water Resources. I'm the lead for the Urban Streams Restoration Program.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Ted? Ted, did you get, are you with us? We'll go to Lisa then.
Hi, I'm Lisa Moretti. I'm with the City of Sacramento, also a part of the Sacramento Stormwater Quality Partnership with Dahlia. And I work a lot on issues related to monitoring or trash within the city.
All right. I see Ted's here.
Yeah, hi Greg, Ted Frank.
Hey there.
Sorry, it took me a little few seconds there to find all the mute and video buttons.
Yeah, well, that's the way it is for me.
Yeah, all these different systems that we all get to use now that we're all working remotely. So quick introduction. I'm most recently retired branch chief at the Department of Water Resources, and as there, Tracy was one of my staff persons, and so I'm happy to see she's attending here. And I'm joining you, care of Greg Bates' invitation to come listen in. Part of my interest is working with a few folks here to see if there's some opportunity to create a watershed group around Morrison Creek. And as Esther may have an opportunity to describe, we actually, from the Urban Streams Grant Program, have a grant award with the folks on Morrison Creek, and in collaboration working with Chris Bowles and CBEC on some of that, on that project there. So that's it. I'm a new visitor and just trying to catch up. I also may have to leave towards the middle of the meeting, but I'll continue on as long as I can. Thanks.
Great to have you. Thank you for coming. So since people have to leave, we should just get going. And yeah,
Greg,
yeah.
this is Jamie. Yeah. I'm not on the camera, so you might not see me.
Ah.
And I also have to hang up because I have a meeting right in the middle of this. But I'm Jamie Cameron Harley. I am a volunteer. I've been volunteering for Creek Week and working with Alta and associated creek projects since the 1990s as well. I also worked at DWR. I'm currently a retired annuitant at DWR, and I know Ted. Hi, Ted. And I'm always happy to help. So, thanks.
Well, good to have you here.
And also, I don't know if you can hear me, but this is Sharon Anderson. I've not had any success getting logged in. Otherwise, we have a firewall set up, so I'm right now on my phone.
Oh, great. When you're from the recycling.
Cal Recycle, but I'm going to speak on a different project that's remotely related to Cal Recycle Illegal Dumping Technical Advisory Committee. And if I get a chance to get fully logged in, I can make a presentation.
Okay, great.
And
so,
this is Bob. I'll just add a couple technical points. One is if anybody needs Greg or I to show a presentation for you and flip through slides, just send them to us via email. And I've been texting with Christine. She's on the East Coast and doesn't know if she's going to be able to attend or not today, but she's aware and will log in if she can.
That'd be great.
This is Christine Gilbert with Sierra College.
Christine Gilbert, great to have you.
Chris Bowles here from CBEC as well, Greg. Just want to make sure you know I'm here.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not seeing those, but I'll learn how to do it soon. So Christine from Sierra College, biology, right, Christine?
Environmental sciences. I also teach in the biology department on the side.
Okay. And Chris, you want to tell us your company?
Yeah, I said probably too quickly, Greg. Chris Bowles with CBEC Eco Engineering Consultant. Okay. I'm just the general dog's body at that company. You know, I make the tea and sweep the floor and do whatever anybody else doesn't want to do.
Yeah, that's true, huh? Okay. Well then, here we are at the notes, and the notes came from a long time ago, back in September, 6 months ago. and we had a sort of a general startup meeting and talked about COVID. I did my best to capture that and send it out. Does anyone have any comments about them or anything they would want to say about that?
Hey, Greg, sorry to circle back on introductions, but this is Dylan Wood calling from California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm on the phone as well, was having trouble with the meeting, but I'm here listening in. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, so anything about the notes that anyone wants to talk about?
Greg, if you'd like to show those, you can click that 4th tab on your screen and that'll pull those up. Yeah, all the way at the top on the right. There you go. If you click that, that'll pull the notes up on your screen.
I don't know. I don't see the
Yeah,
notes.
just click. You were over it. Right there. Just click right there. Whoops.
Right there. I did click. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I got a list.
But we don't need to look. Why don't we just keep moving since so many people have to leave early and
Yeah,
we've all
good
got
idea.
access to the notes?
Good idea. I think the one thing about the notes that was interesting was that it called out the fact that there's a lot more trash and a lot more illegal dumping and a lot more unhoused people out on the creeks. And a lot of our topics today get back to that. So that was, I think, a tie-in to, it seems to be a continuing topic. So the first presentation is from Cordy Craig, Placer Resource Conservation District, telling us about a grant project that she's working on, that the district is working on.
And Cordy, if you want to show your slides or something like that, I can make you presenter right now.
That would be great, Bob. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Okay, you should see a prompt to show your screen.
Perfect.
There you go. We can see it.
Okay, that's what you guys see?
Yep, we're seeing your PowerPoint, and you could put it in viewer mode if you'd like to presentation. Perfect. It looks great.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, as I briefly said before, my name is Cordy Craig. I am the Conservation Project Coordinator for Placer RCD. I just started in August of 2020, so most of my job has been virtual thus far, but that's okay. So today I'm just going to talk about a recent grant proposal that we submitted through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, titled the Red Suspenia Removal and Riparian Health Program. Let me make sure there we go. So I'm sure most everybody in this group knows of Red Suspenia and kind of the negative effects of it, but I'll briefly go over it. So it's an aggressive invasive species that tends to take over riparian corridors and has negative effects on layered negative effects on our environment, recreation, aesthetics, and economics. And so it really decreases the native plant and wildlife biodiversity, increases risks of erosion, and as all Californians know, water is our most valuable natural resource. And so Red Suspenia is a high water user and has high transpiration rates, which means that we run the risk of, if left unchecked, small creeks could run dry. There's also less water available for downstream users, which could negatively affect our agricultural sector. So Placer RCD has had a long and tumultuous relationship with Red Suspenia. So we got involved in Red Suspenia removal back in 2006 when we partnered with the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. And since 2006, we have hired contractors to go in every summer and remove Red Suspenia from the Dry Creek watershed, yet it keeps growing back. And so we have talked to some of our contractors and talked on the inside and kind of tried to question this sustainability issue. And that is why we're submitting this grant to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So it's the 5-star and Urban Waters Restoration Grant. And what we want to do is address the sustainability issue. So what we realized is that hiring contractors every year isn't providing the sustainable and lasting solution to our problem. And although eradication of the species is highly unlikely just because of how proliferative it is, controlled management is very possible and it's within reach, but it requires education, volunteerism, and local passion. And so our NIFWF proposal focuses on 3 primary goals. So what we want to do is establish a stakeholder group that strategically addresses the management of red suspenia and other invasive species. And I will note that this is not a new issue. There are plenty of local groups that have done some really great work volunteering throughout Sacramento and Placer County and removing red suspenia. And I think Placer RCD is just getting more involved and putting our hand in the pot. So what we're trying to do is host a series of volunteer events that will help with the removal of red suspenia, and also host environmental education events that teach both adults and children about some of the negative effects of this species and kind of methods of removal. So we've have a number of partners that have written letters of support for this project, including the Placer Nature Center, and they're going to be really pivotal in those environmental education events. The Friends of Dry Creek Parkway, who are great, Valley Foothill Watershed Collaborative, the county, Safeca, Rushmore Consulting, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So right now what we're looking at is the map that I submitted for the NIFWF proposal, and I'll kind of walk us through it. So what we're looking at is the southwest corner of Placer County. I'm sure you can see my mouse a little bit. So here's the county line. To the south is Sacramento County. We're in Placer. So given that we're the Placer Resource Conservation District, we are focusing within Placer County, but that is positively affecting Sacramento County because everything will positively affect what moves downstream. And so we have 3 different colors here in the Dry Creek watershed. So the purple is representing what we're treating with our contractors. And so Safeca has generously provided funding to hire contractors in order to remove red suspenia on these purple areas. And that includes Dry Creek, Antelope Creek, Seat Ravine, and Miners Ravine. And the red color is kind of the priority areas that we're addressing with our volunteers. And the reason we place them there is that it's critical to address the upstream areas because the way that red suspenia evolves or spreads is by dropping its seed in the water and then moving downstream. So if we can get to the most upstream area, we're going to be looking good. And then this green treatment area is a second priority zone, and that's if for some reason either we don't find red suspenia in these red areas, we can look more towards the green areas. But overall, we're treating a little over 30 miles of riparian corridors. And so by removing red suspenia in these areas, we're creating lasting effects, and hopefully we're going to have fewer and fewer plants to remove as the years progress. And that's kind of the plan. So as far as what's next, right now we have 3 years of funding from the Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, and we're planning on hiring Rushmore Consulting, who helped us out last summer. They did a phenomenal job, and so they're going to be helping us out again this summer. Unfortunately, this NIFWF grant has a pretty long turnaround. So I submitted the grant in February. I will not hear back until August, which means that likely Rushmore Consulting will be almost finished with their work. And our program implementation would not happen until summer of 2022. But that gives us a fair amount of time to organize a stakeholder group and start to strategically address some areas that have a lot of hotspots of red suspenia. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was a pretty quick presentation, but I won't go diving into the details because we're not quite funded yet. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and also if anybody wants to get more involved, feel free to email me. But otherwise, I'm going to hand this back to Bob.
Okay, and Greg, I'll be making you presenter again.
Okay.
So you should see the option to share your screen.
So
Great.
Rushmore is going to be the company that does the actual removal in the purple areas. Is that, yeah? And, okay, we're not hearing you yet, Cordy.
Thank you, sorry. So they've been hired to tackle those spots, and some of that has to do with the topography. So there are some hazardous areas that we don't really want to take volunteers into, and there's also some areas that have a fair bit of trash. So we want to make sure that our volunteers have a safe and positive experience. But that's why it's helpful to have these contractors hired to tackle those more hazardous areas.
So are the volunteers going to be just will they be funded by the grant that you applied for? Or, okay, so then that isn't so the volunteer part wouldn't start until 2022.
Yeah, that's correct. So the SAFECA funding is only for the contractors, and then the NIFWIF funding would be helping us organize outreach materials, staff time, and would help fund to make these volunteer events happen.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will there be, with Rushmore, will they be doing chemical applications in addition to mechanical removal?
So it is primarily mechanical removal. On some areas where it's heavy infestation, we're going to do a cut and paint method, which means very little herbicide is used, but basically the stump is cut and then a dot of herbicide is placed on the stump.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else about that program that anyone wants to talk about?
Cordy, this is Chris.
Okay,
oh, sorry. This is Chrissy Gilbert with Sierra College, and I'm sending you an email right now. Just give you a heads up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chrissy.
Greg, this is Ted Frank. I have a question just out of interest. Has there been any consideration of using goats or sheep in lieu of mechanical removal, or after even for maintenance purposes? Just curious.
So I have not considered grazing as an option, but I haven't done much research on grazing and I don't have much experience in grazing. So I'm happy to consider that. And I think that's a really good option to look into. Thank you, Ted.
Cordy, this is Matt. It is toxic to a lot of animals. Red Sespania. So.
Oh, yeah. So you're absolutely right, Alta. It has, I believe it's a neurotoxin. Is that correct?
Not sure, but I know it's highly toxic.
Yeah, and so that's probably the primary reason that we haven't grazed it.
Hi, this is Sarah. I just wanted to mention that grazing could be an obstacle because a lot of these areas are accessed through private property. So getting people to allow us to bring goats through might be an issue. But our contract with SAFECA, the ongoing contract that we have is for, contractors to remove it mechanically.
Could I, or is there anything else? Could I ask a little more general question, and not to put you on the spot, but just kind of your general, a little more information about how the RCD is, what your kinds of things you're pursuing. I know we had a conversation on the phone a while back that was really interesting to me, in that it seemed that the RCD's current interests might be broader than they have been in the past. Would you mind saying a little bit about that? Maybe what are you looking for, partners in other projects, or planning some other things that maybe we haven't seen from the RCD before?
Yeah, sure. So Sarah might be able to add on to what I'm saying, but the RCD has grown substantially in the last year from, I believe, 3 people to now we have, what, 13, Sarah?
Yeah, that's
and so,
right.
as she mentioned, our bandwidth has increased substantially, and we're working both in forestry and agriculture. We have 2 large fuel breaks happening right now. We have a registered professional forester on staff, and we have several conservation planners and a soil health technician that is helping us to increase technical assistance towards small producers in the county. But Sarah, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, one of the things that we're going to be doing this next fiscal year is our strategic plan, and I know our board was really interested in getting more involved in watershed health in Placer County. We've primarily been focused on ag and forestry, and I think that we're well positioned now to make some moves in the watershed health arena. So that's why we applied for this grant, to expand our efforts with the Red Suspania project and watershed health in the Dry Creek area. We're also looking at a project with Auburn Ravine, a restoration project there. So we're sort of in the planning phases with that, but we're available and we're ready to get started on working on some more of these watershed health projects. So we're excited about that, and we want to keep in touch with all of the partners that we can and learn more about what everyone else is doing, so that we can, step in and partner with folks where needed.
Well, I wish you guys success for many reasons, and one of them is we've got a real problem with Red Suspania further downstream, and Steelhead Creek is just totally choked with it, and it's pretty difficult to justify doing any control efforts downstream when we've got that seed bank coming from upstream. So if you guys are successful, maybe we can make some more progress downstream in a few years.
All right, that's it. Should we move on? The next item, item 5, is Sharon Anderson talking about a new volunteer project.
And I am online, but you guys have my PowerPoint, because I
Yeah,
can't
Greg,
access.
I was just about to interject. I just opened up email on another screen to pull that in. So in just a second here, I'll have that up, and I'll load my screen. And Sharon, you can open it on your screen and just tell me when to flip pages. So we'll make sure.
Okay, let me know when you've got it pulled up, and then I'll start in.
Will do. I'm opening it up right now. Oh, 1 second here. It's trying to open in my browser. Let me get it open in PowerPoint. Okay, Greg, I'm going to take over the screen, and Sarah, I'll have the first page showing as soon as we go live here.
And hi, everybody. Just let me do a quick introduction. My name is Sharon Anderson, and I'm a retired annuitant for Cow Recycle. But as part of what I do for work, I branched off and started doing something in my community that will actually help feed into the Cow Recycle statewide illegal dumping technical advisory committee. And part of that committee is looking at standards and training for anybody who does trash cleanups and data information. And we got to talking about community cleanups. And anyhow, I'll dive right into this Elk Grove anti-trash community cleanups on how it began and then how we're continuing the impact. Next slide.
Okay, we're on slide 2.
Yep. So here you see a picture of David and Kalia. It's an amazing effort that these two started months ago, back in August. They posted a picture of themselves cleaning up trash, and they bragged about it. And they said, look what we got. We got it out of this one creek shed area near Leatherby's Ice Creamery and Laguna Boulevard. And people were all like oohing and awing on Nextdoor over their efforts. People were asking, are you ever going to do it again? Can we join you? And to which David and Kalia responded, well, just go grab a bag and do your own thing. People are affiliative versus wanting to do their own cleanup. They want to be part of a group. They want to schedule. They want to belong. So reluctantly, David and Kalia agreed to schedule future cleanups and let people know when and where they were going to be. Well, meanwhile, next slide, we noticed what they were doing. We, meaning some old folks, that kind of knew that these kids, they're in their 20s, they were on to something good. The fact that they got the attention of many of us, and they got the attention of a champion. One of our now council members took that information that they had posted on Nextdoor, flashed it out bigger off of his Facebook wall, and he has a huge audience. And people were responding to him, the council member, saying, oh my goodness, these kids are onto something. We want to help. And that is when the council member and myself created a Facebook wall and a Facebook page for this group and pushed it out there and got it to be notarized. And Alta knows exactly what I'm talking about because she saw it early, and she was one of our champions as well, and reposted this community, literally this, we're not a nonprofit, we're just a bunch of people that want to do good things. And the power of Facebook and Nextdoor, I can't emphasize that enough. It seemed to grab the attention of many people, including KCRA. And I did put a link on there. I'm not going to click it because you have to listen to a commercial before it actually gets to the story. But we got picked up by KCRA, and that even increased our Facebook presence. So that's the power of having champions who are rather pushy and continuously put our effort out there. Okay, so then next slide. So we ended up also getting, because myself and Kevin knew, Kevin Spees is the council member, we knew how government programs work. We know the supports that were needed for these kids to continue doing their efforts, because they were trying to cobble together their own plastic bags, their own grabbers, and they were trying to get volunteer haulers to just come and take the trash away. And people were asking, what do I do with a bag of trash when I'm done? And they were taking it home to their apartment and trying to find room in the bin. And that's how we, behind the scenes, knowing how our parks department is managed and knowing how the city is managed and knowing the franchise haulers, we knew what we needed to do. So what we ended up doing was getting the parks department, who is a contracted cleanup crew for the city of Elk Grove, they agreed to come pick up the trash because they already had people on staff on the days that work is being done. So between them, the city of Elk Grove, and our private residential hauler, they collaborated and put together essentially like a guidelines. And we used Sac Creek Week's guidelines. We use Ocean Conservancy's guidelines for community cleanups. We gave that information to the city of Elk Grove. They created one. I want to click on it. I know that we have it somewhere in the PowerPoint, but I'm not going to do that because I can't do it and you can, whatever. It's not going to work because we're remote together. Next slide. The supports are so important, but so is creating routine and then documenting the efforts. When we created our routine, we all agreed because we figured, one of us will always be at these cleanups. On Facebook and on Nextdoor, we create the same information: the date, the time, the location, where to check in, read the guidelines first, and then we tell the story. And between David and myself, we have some colorful information when we repeat the story and when we
talk about each one of the photos. It takes time, but what we generate when we do this is an invitation for others to join in the process. And we know that through good health and good practices, maybe we can stem the tide of people who do littering and trash and dumping and all that other stuff. We can maybe get inside the conscience of folks and make it better. We also ask our local representatives to participate. Here's a picture of David holding trash. I always ask him to pose at some point in time because I'm like the photojournalist in a way. And then the other thing that we did was we went, or I spoke at city council meetings. I speak at any time I can to remind people to come and attend during public comment period or whatever. And those things are important. Next slide, please. So these are just going to be photos of how we have shared the experience and that we highlight unusual things we find, like this old record. We also show where people have cleaned. We also show on a map where we're going to clean and where to meet. So people can see the expanse of their effort if they're involved. And then if they're looking to get involved, they see people just like them helping out. We have families helping out. In this one photo, you can see them. That's a whole family. Actually, there were 2 others in that family that aren't in the picture. And they're just so willing to just do things. Next slide. We make sure that everybody is a star and Alta will know this too. I make people pose in front of trash. And, you know, nobody seems to mind getting their photo posted. And that's one of the things that when they sign the waiver form, it basically says your photo may be, you know, you may be in a photo, and they're all like, okay, I'll sign it, no problem. And that we remind people that hard work is okay. In the middle picture down at the bottom, you can see 2 young men pushing out a shopping cart loaded with trash. That was hard work. It was gravel. And it was about a quarter mile that they had to push that shopping cart to get it to a spot where it could be collected and moved out. The other thing we do is, you know, we kind of pose some questions like, what's with all these tiny alcohol bottles? And it makes it interesting and inviting for people to join. And the whole thing is with any effort like this, you want people to want to join and come back. So as a documentarian or somebody who's writing the information up, you have to not be a nerd, or, you know, if you are a nerd, it's cool. Just kind of make it fun. Next slide. The main thing that we tell people is a little bit of what to expect. You know, we may show a picture of what it looked like before with all the trash in the road on the bottom and what it looked like when we were done. It was clean. And some examples of what the supplies are, and that they can actually pick up a supply kit. We've worked with our partners. The Community Services District has a kit where there's a sharps container, a bag, a vest, not a grabber. We supply those. Thank you, Alta, for loaning us some, and gloves. And then the other thing that we do is we post some interesting photos of, you know, here's some guys doing this was a tough one. There were all kinds of metal debris in this drainage channel. Not good to have when you're looking at a waterway. So these guys were pulling out all the heavy stuff, and they used the rope thank you, Alta, the rope and the hook came in so handy that day. And then the next slide is making memories. You know, whatever we do is we try to invoke a feeling with the recap, and when we're talking to the individual people, and we talk about next time, and we praise everybody who's there. You know, and the other thing that when we're doing our Facebook recap, we tag our support system. So we tag Elk Grove Recycles, we tag the Parks Department, we tag anybody who's been involved. And they've also shared with us some hashtags to put on our recap pages. So, you know, recap is big time. The other thing that we do behind the scenes is we do an email recap to the powers that be, so that they know where to go pick up the materials that are out there. And if they can't, they know who to call. They call the city public works or whatever. So it's almost like you have to be the smart person and know the system underneath, so that you can help the system work with all the volunteers that are just out there on their own time. We make it a short invitation. We don't last more than an hour 15 minutes. We don't want people to burn out. We want them to have a good Saturday. So it's a short thing. We get 20 to 40 volunteers. You know, it just depends. All told, I think we've signed up over 100 people on our sheets. It's been It's been a good run. We've had a couple hitches with the cleanup when the Parks Department didn't have enough staffing, but overall for Elk Grove, every Saturday except for I think one, we took a Saturday off, but then somebody ended up organizing something anyhow. We've done a lot of work. We're about ready to start over at the areas that we've already cleaned and begin again, because, you know, nothing stays clean. Nothing is perfect, especially with encampments and, you know, fast food wrappers and all that other stuff that you see in the stormwater systems. But at this point, the pride of the city, because of the visibility of what we're doing and the people who have championed our cause, there's been an uptick in a feeling of pride. Next slide. So I put my personal email here for if you need to reach me or if you want to reach any of the other administrators of this group. I'm happy to share their information as well. We are so grateful to those entities who have given us supplies, whether it's bags, grabbers. We've gotten vests from our franchise hauler. Our franchise hauler also bought us some not quite as sturdy grabbers, and they give us bags and gloves, more sturdy gloves. And it seems like every time we ask for help, we usually get it. So any questions?
Anyone who has questions, you might need to unmute yourselves. And in the meantime, I'm going to switch presenter over to you again, Greg.
Okay.
And thank you for that presentation, Sharon. I thought it was fantastic. Being involved in some cleanups myself, it was great to see, and some good pointers there. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me and asking me aboard.
Yeah, and thank you, Sharon. I'm just, you're like a superstar. So I really appreciate all you're doing. I'm learning so much from you, and I hope to pass this on to others.
And we really appreciate you. We stole some material off of your webpage, and you know, it's been a really good collaboration, and we don't mind anybody flashing it forward, you know, and taking our Facebook wall and flying it out there and letting people know that this is possible and to emulate us. We're actually got tucked in under somebody else's Earth Day cleanup that's scheduled for April 24th, I believe. There was oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Wes, I think. Alta, what's his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wes Sam. I told him about you. I'm guilty.
Yeah. No, and we've been in communication, so we're getting tucked in, and we're going to essentially, quote, count, unquote, as part of the big, massive cleanup that he's trying to organize for Earth Day. And we're pretty much going to stay in Elk Grove because that's where our liability forms are. But we already found the person that we would be in contact with if we wanted to get into the city of Sacramento, like along the northern border of Elk Grove towards the west. There's an area that could use an incredible amount of cleanup and probably could use us as well. We've also gotten such notoriety that there have been other folks from the Cosumnes River Preserve interest. They want us to clean up Hood Road or Twin Cities Road all the way leading up to the Cosumnes River Preserve, but that's in Galt/County of Sacramento, and we don't have the relationship yet so that we can sign liability forms. Because for us, being able to sign a liability form or release of liability form is really big for our volunteers. We really need to protect ourselves, and we need to protect anybody involved, you know, and so that people know what they're getting into. That's the little bit of the expectations. We need to be very clear on that.
Yeah, I'd like to add that you are fortunate because there's the red tape, growth, and the people you're dealing with. It's much more streamlined than with some of the other jurisdictions.
And I think the other jurisdictions may take note a little bit of what we're doing, and I think we're going to tip the scale a wee bit into reduced bureaucracy, because I think that's where it's at.
Yeah, great.
Sharon, Cecile Carson. I wanted to check because I'd love to follow up more with you also on your initiatives and possibly how Keep California Beautiful could assist you. The email on the last slide, I just wanted to check the spelling. Instead of Sharon, it was Sharin. Is that correct? Or is it Sharon Elk Grove with an O?
It no, I actually did that on purpose. I'm in Elk Grove, so it's Cher. You know, my mom
Okay.
calls it Cher.
Sorry.
So
That's
Cher,
what I was trying to figure out real quick.
yeah, no, that's the right one. That's me. Yes, it is.
Okay.
And it's interesting, KCB and Christine Flowers, I know her. So you know, let's get tucked in.
We'd love to connect you in our new partners program. So great.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I don't hear any other questions. I appreciate you guys giving me the time, and you know, power on. ARBC is a great group, and you know, I know what it's like to be a nonprofit, and I know the mission, and let's just keep going, and we're going to make a difference.
Thanks a lot, Sharon. Nice presentation. I just wondered if how does your protocol handle the camps and the stuff that's left from camps? Do volunteers do that part?
Well, it depends. And actually, in the guidelines that the city has given us, and we've mimicked it for the most part on our pinned page on our Facebook wall, there's several of us who are more or less trained a little better or a little to a higher level of identifying an active versus an inactive camp. And we will, if we can, clean inactive camps. Like if the materials are soiled and moldy and have been there for a long time, we'll pull it out. We all know what to do with sharps, with, you know, syringes and any medical waste, and also human waste. We give a trash talk at every cleanup where we alert all the volunteers of what's going on. And if they run into a camp, we let them know immediately, contact one of us. If it's an active camp, you know, and David, if you haven't, Alta's met him, and I don't know if anybody else has met him, but David and Kalia usually get to a cleanup well in advance, or they scout it well in advance. So they already know what the pitfalls are going to be, and they warn all of us or alert all of us of what the pitfalls could be. Where are the camps in that? And we leave the existing camps alone, but we have an officer that we will contact, actually two. We have two homeless resource officers in the city of Elk Grove. And in advance of going to some trickier cleanups, we've contacted them and asked what should we be looking for? What can we, you know, where do we stay away? Are there camps? The whole question. We get good response. I mean, they're very immediate in responding to us of saying, there is a camp on the other side of the railroad tracks. Leave it be. We know about it, blah, blah, blah. If we see a camp that they didn't already identify, we let them know the location and where we found it, and we leave it alone if it's active, and that sort of a thing. And we have a good rapport going back and forth, so nobody gets in any kind of trouble, so to speak, or, you know, we don't want any conflicts at all with any system.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing, I know sometimes that can be a pretty substantial amount of material from a camp like that. Do you bag all of that, or you must arrange with the city parks to pick that up, and you have spots where you drag it to, or
yes,
I mean,
actually, all the above. You hit everything. When we do our cleanups, we've been told by the Parks Department where to best place things, you know, whether it's at a trailhead or an area that is on public property, not private, you know. So even if we kind of sneak off and do a little cleaning on a parcel that might be a private, you know, privately owned, we may clean it up just for aesthetics. And all the materials are usually left in a spot you see in all the photos. There are bags and things all lumped together in an area. And our volunteers have dragged couches out from underneath overpasses or, you know, bridge areas. They've drugged material out that didn't belong there and put it on the side. And again, if the Parks Department, if the items are too bulky and their staff can't deal with it, they'll call the city of Elk Grove, and the city of Elk Grove will handle it as an illegal dumping call, because of the franchise agreement allows for cleanup of illegal dumping. So there's a there's a good system set up. We're using it.
And is that most of what you end up handling is things from encampments?
No, I think encampments are just a small fraction. Mostly what we're dealing with is storm water debris and blown litter. A lot of it is that. There are some items that people have chucked over their rear fences if they're, if they live along a drainage area, and we don't care how it got there, we just know it needs to get gone. And we will, in the recap that we send to the city and to the Parks Department, we may highlight it looks like the materials were dumped from over a fence, that sort of thing. So some materials, illegal dumping, some of it, bulk of it is stormwater or blown litter, blown debris, or just carelessness. People walking trails and just chucking their stuff off to the side. I can't quantify the amount of material that could be from encampments or as a result of encampments, like shopping carts, because we'll drag shopping carts all over the place just to get them out of the area and into the right hands. So,
yeah,
that's the best answer I can give.
I'd like another thing about the homeless is the concentration of homeless encampments is way less than in most parts of the county and Dry Creek, Greg.
Okay.
They also have the advantage of a really nice trail system along the creeks that gets lots of use. And I think that helps a lot too.
All right.
And we also have the areas where the officers, our homeless resource officers, are not pushing homeless encampments out. And they're working with the campers to keep a clean camp so that they're not as visible and not as much of a perceived public nuisance. And so that has helped our homeless population to remain intact or in their current locations, because they're not very well found. There's sort of specific areas that we know that where they exist, but our homeless resource officers have done the cash for trash. It's not really cash, it's like a food card or whatever, to make sure that the camps are kept a little bit cleaner. Some are not. Some of them are just a disaster, or the abandoned encampments are a disaster. But we'll clean those up if we run into them.
This is Bob. I would just add that with Sharon and Cordy's permissions, I can add these presentations to the page on our website where we've got the agenda, and then we'll resend that link to everybody so you can download them if you'd like to get a copy and click those links.
Yeah, you have my permission, sure.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. I'm going to send you an updated version because I did send you a previous version, but the one I presented today, there were a couple of changes. So I'll just quickly shoot you the updated version.
Perfect. I'll try to get those online by the end of our meeting and send a link out to everybody.
That is great. Thank you very much for that. Shall we move on? Anything else?
Thank you.
Yes, that was wonderful. Great project. Amazing.
Yeah. All right. We'll check back in with you in about a year.
We'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Take care. Bye now.
Bye-bye. So item 6 is about the anadromous fish that we have been monitoring mostly on Dry Creek, is what Dry Creek Conservancy and others in our area have focused on. It has a lot of anadromous fish. There are other groups working primarily on Auburn Ravine and of course Casumnas, and but Dry Creek Conservancy has, which is an affiliate of and founder of this of Valley Foothill Watersheds Collaborative, which is who organizes this stakeholder group. And Dry Creek Conservancy has worked with on a spawning survey for a number of years since the 90s, and in the last couple of years, we really haven't had fish coming up. And that's been, you know, a real disappointment and a real cause for concern. So one of the ideas that has come out of our discussions about that is to try to survey the area and see if there are some impediments to the fish, because we've always had fish, no matter what the conditions were, generally in the ocean or in the river, we've always had at least some fish, and we just haven't seen them in the last 2 years. So the idea that came out was, well, let's try and do some kind of survey. And I know in the last year, the year before last, county and city and Department of Fish and Wildlife had been out there on the creek working on dams and things that they were made aware of. And so we decided that it would be interesting to try and survey, especially the lower area, the Steelhead Creek area that Dry Creek connects to. And Chris Bowles can tell us something about that idea.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Greg. That was a fantastic introduction for the motivation for this idea. So I guess I would characterize this initial survey as sort of a pilot project for a much larger idea in the future. And so the idea is to produce a drone flight, undertake a drone flight from the D15 pump station, which is in Nemdeck, Steelhead Creek, and in the northern end of Steelhead Creek, going, it's probably about 4 miles, 3 miles north of Main Street, where Main Street crosses over Steelhead Creek. So start up at the northern end. There's no fish passage upstream of the D15 pump station. D15 pump station is immediately north of the confluence with Dry Creek. So fly south down Steelhead from D15 for about 7 miles, all the way to the confluence with the with Bannon Slough, and then into the Sacramento River. We would fly that path, digitize a flight path that could be repeatable on exactly the same path and same altitude, fairly low altitude survey video, so we could get as much detail as we could, probably about 150 feet altitude. And we're waiting for the right conditions. We've had a little bit of precipitation, so the flows in Steelhead Creek are definitely up. It's finding a balance at the moment to do the flight between sufficiently low water levels in Steelhead Creek and vegetative cover. The leaves on the riparian canopy are coming in now pretty fast, so we can't leave it too much longer, so we can get maximum visibility. Although at 150 feet, we should be able to see quite well through the vegetation if we do it in the next week or two. But we were going to do it last week, and then we had rain, so we're probably going to do it next week. So anyway, we'll produce a video for this 7-mile stretch, and the primary objective of this initial pilot is to establish a baseline for primarily in the first instance, looking for barriers to fish passage. So whether they be natural beaver dams or human-induced barriers, we just don't know. Greg and his colleagues have hypothesized that something is going on. Maybe it's not on Steelhead, but a survey like this from the air will help to identify whether or not there is something on Steelhead, and at least provide a baseline. The technology now is such that from video, we can digitize coordinates of particular features, whether they be barriers or whatever else we may be looking at. In this case, we're looking at barriers to fish passage. That's fairly new technology. The method before was much more time intensive to transfer a video image to a digital coordinate. So we can digitize now whatever features we see on the video, which is really cool. But the other benefits that this video could be used for is establishing a baseline for identifying areas of trash or camps for the unhoused, monitoring how those camps either get larger, get smaller, or relocate to other areas over time. So the project at the moment is just for this first 7-mile flight. But there's a much grander idea developing to not only do repeat flights every year or twice a year, but also extend up into the tributaries, whether that be Arcade, Roebler, Dry Creek, etc. That would certainly be great. But we're gonna at least establish an initial baseline for the 7 miles of steelhead. Really, the ideal time to fly again would be the late fall, November, December, before flows get up, and after we've had a summer and fall of activity out there, whether it's natural beaver or human activity, artificial dams for capturing fish, whatever. So this would be, again, the baseline, and ideally, we don't have funding yet for a flight in November, December, or subsequent years, and be part of an ongoing monitoring program. And the vision for the future would also be not just flights, but also ground truthing. It's a bit more difficult to do the ground truthing from safety perspectives, etc. We'll be flying from the top of the levee, well away from any activity down in steelhead, and we've had a lot of experience with quote unquote activity in steelhead, and it can be pretty scary at times. So we're trying to keep our field team out of harm's way. In the past we've had to have park rangers or the police with us, but in this case we're up on the top of the levee in a truck, and always 2 people there. So any questions on this first initial phase? Funding is coming from Dry Creek Conservancy, I should add, and we'll be using a county parks, for the lower end county parks, drone license, and we of course use FCC approved, FAA approved pilots.
Yeah, and also funding is also coming from Sac Area Creeks Council. Just to.
I apologize. Sorry, Alta. There's a lot to remember. Thank you.
It is.
That's okay.
So I put this thing up here, which is an idea that's been being discussed by Dry Creek Conservancy and Valley Foothill Watersheds Collaborative, which is an idea of trying to do a more comprehensive reporting on data about the anadromous fish, which could be, this drone thing could support that. And also, I think one thing that comes out of this is that this kind of technology might support the work that's done by lots of different agencies. As Chris mentioned, could have to do with trash and with camps, and could have to do with vegetation. There's just a lot of different applications. And for that reason, it seems to me like a really good demonstration of what this group is about. This is a collaborative group to try and share resources. And so, you know, if we had a sort of maybe a Google-like fly pattern, we might be able to serve a lot of purposes with something like that. I don't know. That's pretty big vision, but that's sort of the long range idea. So what about, does anybody have any thoughts or questions about the idea of flying Steelhead Creek with a drone? And one other point that Chris made, which I think for me was really an important one, is the technology now allows for any subsequent flights to take exactly the same route, so that you're really comparing the same thing.
Greg, this is Ted Frank. Just a question for you and Chris. Is there typically enough water to do any sort of snorkeling survey in, say, Steelhead Creek?
There is right now, Ted, yeah. I wouldn't fancy doing it myself, but yes, there's enough water in there right now.
Is it clear enough water, I guess, is part of my, especially right now, if you're seeing high flows, it's probably not clear enough water for effective snorkel surveying or snorkeling. And I didn't know if it had lower flows at shoulder seasons that would make it feasible or not.
Yeah, it's perennial, Ted. Yeah, the water in there right now is a lot, obviously runoff from agricultural land. There's erosion in Steelhead. There's just all I don't know how to put it, detritus that's been washed in from Steelhead Creek itself. But through the summer and fall, there's a lot less runoff, obviously, and the water is slightly cleaner. There's a lot of vegetation. There's a lot of non-native aquatic vegetation in there as well. So you could certainly get in at spots. But as I'm sure you can imagine, the aquatic vegetation is just getting non-native. It's just getting worse and worse each year. So the right time of year, you could get in and do snorkel surveys in parts.
Thanks, Chris.
I have a question about that, though. The water quality is very poor. You know, with all those homeless camps, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. You could get sick. Plus, a very aggressive campers there that no telling what they would do, and they have dogs, aggressive dogs too.
Yeah, we've had exactly, Alta. We've had some pretty unpleasant experiences in Steelhead in recent years.
Did you have something, Cecile?
I do. I think this is a very interesting project. I know in some of my my research that I've been doing that there are a number of people who have done or attempted to do small studies, especially in recording the litter. But one of their challenges has been getting a high enough resolution to actually be able to kind of see what you're seeing instead of kind of a mass. So if you're looking at fish, I would think you need to have a really high definition or to be able to zoom in to be able to get that, which would, you know, be able to get the litter data, which I would love to be able to see. And I think there's potential there, but I'm just curious about the technology and what you're using.
Yeah, you know, it's just a regular camera, Cecile. We're not looking for fish with the aerial flight, we're looking for barriers to fish passage.
Right.
So anything above the water,
Yeah.
yeah, and anything above the water, we can't. The water is not clean enough to be able to see through it to see the fish. But the resolution of the aerial photography is such now. It's very high resolution photography, so you can literally make out pieces of trash on the land surface.
And,
yeah, you could tell if it was a car tire or a shopping cart or whatever.
And this is Bob. I would add, I also fly a drone, but I don't have a commercial license. And I the same GoPro that I use on my drone, I also use in Lake Tahoe. It's waterproof, and you can drop it down pretty far. So even people who are going through in waders might be able to use a GoPro on a stick and get down under the water without submerging themselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, Alta mentioned the water quality, but even, wading in Steelhead through this reach, you need security. We've like I say, without going into details, we've had some pretty unpleasant experiences down there. So it's the safety angle, Bob, which is of greatest concern to me.
So this is Dirk from Citrus Heights. It sounds like I was wondering the angle in between being on foot on the shore and the snorkeling, if being in a kayak would be advantageous, but it sounds like that may be safety impaired also.
Yeah, we found that we've done kayak work down there in Steelhead, and we found that we were bothered less. People were very inquisitive what we were doing. We were doing work for Safeca about 3 years ago, and we were surveying, doing bathymetric surveys in Steelhead Creek. So we ran all the way up from D15 down to the confluence with Bannon, doing hydrographic surveys, bathymetric surveys, and we weren't bothered in the kayak then. It was more when we were on foot, surveying or measuring flows from the bank when either dogs attacked us or humans attacked us, tried to attack us.
Would it be possible to paddle simultaneous to the drone and link the footage? I know there are people that do helmet-mounted GoPros and video descents. In fact, I think it's I don't know. It's on the Russian River. You can actually virtually paddle most of the river with a I don't know if it's a Forest Service or Corps of Engineers or one of those public agencies. They go down in a drift boat, and so wasn't sure if that was something that would be advantageous as you took the aerial to then have a panoramic view from the bank level also.
Yeah, you can do that. You can program the drone to follow objects. Yeah, provided it's got line of sight through a canopy. That's the problem. In the middle of summer with a dense canopy, it's got to be able to see what it's tracking. But yes, in the winter you could definitely do that, and the drone would just follow the people in the kayak.
Any other thoughts or comments, questions? This is I sent out an email several months ago, and this is this is the current status of that project. I sent out an email asking for the consensus of this group to pursue this project underneath the American River Basin Collaborative, and got pretty good response on that. People thought it was worthwhile. So this is how far we've gotten with it, and we'll see what it yields, and maybe we'll be looking for more partners to participate. And we'd really like to hear from anybody who can think of a way that a drone survey might contribute to their work plan. Well, shall we move on to item 7? Is just a continuation of something that we tabled in September, and I'm bringing it up not because I have anything new to add, but just to bring the idea up again and see what people are thinking, which is about the conferences that we've had in the past, and they've been watershed conferences and things like that. So we're just want to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity if somebody's got some ideas and wants to make something happen. Or is it too soon? That's what we said last time. We said it was a little bit too soon.
Greg, I'm involved in a lot of conferences with a lot of different organizations, everybody asking that question. And generally people who had been planning for the fall are planning to go forward, but it's all based on how well the vaccines roll out. You know, if we're like 95% vaccinated rate by the midsummer, then it might be okay. But if we're not, then it still seems to be pretty dependent on the COVID variable until fall, at least.
Yeah.
Greg, I just
That makes
wanted
it
to share.
difficult.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that the Casca conference last year was a virtual conference, and they ended up getting a record number of conference attendees. I think although having a face-to-face conference is really good for networking and that kind of stuff, but having a virtual conference should be maybe still an idea on the table, and it might actually allow people who can't travel or have a long commute, encourage them to attend, because now they can just go on their Zoom link, and attend the conference that way. So just putting it out there as maybe a potential of considering going virtual. And I see Maureen is on, so she probably has better ideas than me anyway. So go ahead, Maureen.
Hey, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, Dolly, I was just thinking the same thing of maybe, at this point, if there is interest in doing that maybe the webinar would be the appropriate way to go. I think before there was some ideas about trying to separate and do breakout groups, and Zoom is super well set up for doing that, for, different topics. Or sessions and that kind of thing. So that might be an idea to go for if you want to try to do it in the near future.
And this is Bob. I actually hosted the National Zero Waste Conference just a couple of months ago online, and we did exactly that. We had there were breakout rooms. We did a series of webinars leading up to the conference, and then did a 3-day conference and had different speakers. And we had breakout tables and breakout rooms, and it was fantastic. We were surprised because it was the first one we tried to do, and we got 100% positive feedback on it and fantastic turnout. And now we're getting more people saying, hey, can you make sure you do it online again this year, than we are saying, are we going to be back in person next year? And all of them seem to at least want a hybrid version, because then, you know, we always try to walk the talk too. And in this case, people are flying all over the place to go to a conference and calculating greenhouse gas and travel expenses versus doing it online. So there are some advantages. You know, we all wish we could get together and hug and celebrate together, but until then, it seems to be working out pretty well for the most part. And I'd be happy to volunteer some time to help host if you decide to go in that direction.
So this was Dirk from Citrus Sites again. Following up on Dahlia's comment, I'm on the Casca page, and it says it's still pending whether the annual conference this year will be virtual or in Sacramento, actually, this year. It's scheduled for October 25th to 27th. And interestingly, it's recovery and resilience, achieving sustainable stormwater management is the topic. So.
Are there people who want to continue to talk about this outside the meeting?
Greg, I'd be happy to talk with you about that from a technology but non-decision making point.
Yeah.
So we can talk about how it might work, and I'll volunteer time in my platforms. I have Zoom also, and there's also another platform designed specifically for online conferences that is pretty good but can be expensive. So I'd be happy to talk about options and then support you in whichever direction the group wants to go.
Yeah, that's a pretty big resource to have for if there's any interest in it.
I'd be willing to help. I personally don't have a lot of projects or ideas. I've been doing some different types of projects lately related to water financing and drinking water and that, but I'd be happy to help in kind of planning or brainstorming and reaching out to others.
All right.
Yeah, and if you're going to have an organizing committee like last time, I'm happy to participate in that as well.
That's a pretty good start right there.
Dahlia, do you think other folks from Sacramento Stormwater Partnership would be interested?
Yeah, you know, we have a partnership meeting coming up, so we can add this to our agenda and bring it up and see if anybody else wants to participate. So I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
That's great. All right. So then moving on to some of the projects that we have, Alta's been working steadily on her successor to her, long-term Creek Week project. So you want to tell us about that, Alta?
Sure. We are supporting other cleanups, and we've got a few that we did the cleanups in the fall, and since the fall, about starting in February, we started supporting other cleanup efforts. We encourage the random act of cleanups, and I don't get too many bites on that. That's just individuals going out and doing their own little trash collection, and they file a little Google report form to let me know what they've done. But we've got a couple of regular groups working on Saturdays. The main one is Arcade Creek, and one of the Sac Area Creeks Council board members, Bill Templin, is the leader of that group, and he has led 6 Saturday cleanups since the first part of February of Arcade Creek, various locations depending on need. and has removed over 6,000. They've removed over 6,000 pounds of trash over that period. We provide all of the cleanup equipment for them and are paying the dump fees. One Saturday, hey Del, could you, Del, background noise? One Saturday, they were able to hook up with Forensic Clean, which has contracts with the city and the county of Sacramento to clean up encampments. And they hauled the garbage that Saturday for we didn't have to pay the dump fee there that one Saturday. We're supplying, oh, and we also supply Creek Week t-shirts to the volunteers there. And for the Elk Grove anti-trash group, we've loaned them grabbers. We give them Caltrans garbage bags that we've received as donations, and also t-shirts. The t-shirts are pretty popular there in Elk Grove. So it's nice. We do have a large supply of t-shirts because we didn't get to do our event in 2020. So I'm always looking for opportunities to give away a Creek Week t-shirt. There's a student at Sac State who got very involved in our October cleanups, and she approached me about doing a cleanup as a student project at Sac State. So I helped her apply for a grant through Sac City Stormwater, which I think she will get. And so I'm helping her with equipment again also and advice. She's been told by the city of Sacramento that she needs to apply for a permit to do this neighborhood cleanup. It's not a creek cleanup, but she can't figure out how to do the application. She's told this is required, but is having a really difficult time figuring out how to do the actual application for the permit.
Hi, Alta. If you want to send her my email address, I can try to help facilitate it for her.
You know, that would be great. Jessica wasn't able to help her. So Lisa, I wish I had thought to refer her to you earlier, but when I saw you in the meeting today, I thought, I bet you Lisa can help with that.
No worries, just in case Jessica's overwhelmed or can't, I'd be happy to cut through the red tape a little bit.
Great, thank you. That is Lisa speaking, right?
Yes,
Lisa.
that's right. Sorry, Alta. Yes, it's Lisa Moretti.
Thanks.
And
Thanks
do you,
so
you
much.
have my email address?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
And then we're supporting cleanup efforts as they come along. I got a connection through Sharon's group in Elk Grove. Some Cosumnes River College students want to do cleanup this coming weekend, so I'm able to support that cleanup. And then Sharon had mentioned Wes Sams with the March for Science, and I'm connecting him up with people like Sharon and Bill in Arcade Creek and a couple of other spots, and also will supply t-shirts and cleanup equipment. And then Orangevale Recon Park District, they're going to do a cleanup April 10th, and we're fully supporting that cleanup also. What I need to do is develop a tracking system so that I can easily and consistently document the support that we're providing and the results from the cleanups. And so I have to figure out a way to do that because I'm starting to get more and more tentacles, and I feel like I'm losing control of the whole thing. So that's my report.
Thank you. Way more activity than I realized.
Good.
People are getting out in person and doing that, which I
Yes,
didn't know.
that's the idea. Instead of providing an event, a big event where they can feel good about doing one thing one day of the year, I think they can do more. I think we need to raise our expectations of our community members and give them the opportunity to show they can do more than that.
Is there anybody that can, then moving on to the next bullet under number 8, is there anybody that has some information about, it looks like Cecile does.
I do
All right.
indeed. So we had a Christine Flowers and I had a meeting last week with the group that's working on finalizing this project. We're one step again closer to completion. They had a few questions on who would actually benefit, which kind of goes to Alta's point of having data about where litter and trash is and how the app can map where that data is at any time and be available to anyone who has access to the app and website that's been developed. And also just a couple of other basic logistics questions about again, the fact that we're doing more things remotely, which in this particular case, this citizen science project uses a handheld app on an Android or an iPhone. You can ask the tech side of things to Bob Hollis if you want to know the litter side of things, or using it in the field. That's me, because I've been using the app in the field and a couple of other projects. So we were able to also respond to those. So we, based on the conversation that we had, it's our understanding that this will be, the information was being shared with the decision makers this week, I believe. And so hopefully it will be moving forward to actually being funded with the general discussion that we could start as early as late spring in doing research. And I do have a couple of other grant type of items, Greg, whenever it might be appropriate now.
This is a good time.
Okay. So I am also working on Keep America Beautiful grants that are available. Wanted to share one with the group. I'm not sure if it would be applicable or not. It's a pre-application process to receive C-bend devices, which you may or may not be familiar with, but you've probably seen the news. They're kind of a pump that you put into a waterway area, and they collect debris that can then be emptied in, properly. So it will pull in vegetation, but it will also skim for any floating debris and small items, usually up to and as large as bottles. 12 to 14 inches, I think, is the opening side. The challenge is that wherever one of these devices is installed, it needs to be within 20 feet of electricity. They've primarily been used at marinas, but they're looking for other potential applications. So if that's something that anybody may know of a location or interest in, they can contact me, and I can get that process started on a pre-application. There's also an opportunity, 2 grants that are somewhat related in topic, at least, as cigarette litter, but separate concepts. We have, through Keep California Beautiful, submitted a proposal for their cigarette litter prevention program, which would do a more in-depth analysis of cigarettes in and around waterways, and installing containers to hopefully prevent and eliminate those from getting into waterways. But there is, and we'll be looking for, if we receive that grants, we'll be looking for locations within California to implement projects, and this would, we'd like to come back to the collaboration to look at that. So it's a more in-depth 6 to 8 month kind of time frame of analysis and collection of data and collection of butts and counting those, but you get the containers as part of that. The second one is actually, and Bob Hollis can tell you about his use of this. It is a free bin program. So there are 5,000 bins that were offered free, and they can be mounted on poles. They're not freestanding. So I think there are some freestands, but they're two different kinds. They only require that you give GPS coordinates where you put them, and that you agree to have someone that will monitor and empty the containers. The butts, of course, can either be turned in for energy in California, or they can be sent to TerraCycle to turn into plastics. So if there's anyone that might be interested in those free containers, you can also let me know, and can get those in the process of an application.
Yeah, and I can tell you that I introduced them to Lake Tahoe, specifically the Sustainability Department at Incline Village, and they put together a proposal to cover all of the communities surrounding Tahoe, and had 200 of these delivered at no cost. Shipping was free. It includes all the mounting materials, and we were told we were allowed to private brand them. And so those have been rolled out through Tahoe now, and it looks like they'll also be using a mapping app to mark those locations and get that information back to KCB. And if I can find it before the end of our meeting, I'll put up a photo of what they look like.
Are they for cigarette butts or just general trash bins?
These are cigarette specific.
Yeah, those are good to know about. Thanks for bringing that. Is there any other, are there any other questions about what Cecile told us? Either the 2 grants or the project? I don't know. So we could move on to the next bullet, which is the big project in Roseville on the creek restoration. I don't know if Matt's still, I saw him earlier. Are you still here, Matt?
I am, Greg. So if you can hear me, I can go forward on just a brief update here. So we have been working with Army Corps off and on. All of the other permits are set. We have just had a lot of pushback from Army Corps. They were trying to put our project in a regional permit, and they had seen the project and everybody else had approved it. And then they said our project did not align with their regional permit status in the environmental section. So after going through all the consulting with Army Corps and them kind of pushing us in that direction, we learned the hard way that you should just get your own permit for your own project and don't try to go the easy way that they were tricking us into. So just a word of advice, if anybody else is doing a large environmental project that you need an Army Corps permit, just keep steadfast in doing your own permit and don't go the regional approach that they are trying to push right now. So we should be on track to start construction in July this year. You know, all that being said, we still need the final approval from Army Corps, but I think we should have that by mid-April as far as a timeline. And then, you know, we just have construction prep there. So you have it summarized really well in that bullet point, and I can go into detail if anybody has any more specific questions. But it's really just to remove the sediment from being deposited along the lower dry creek there in Roseville, put more habitat there and reduce runoff that's really impacting that section and eroding the bank out to those homes right behind the Chamber of Commerce building there in Roseville.
You know, listening to you talk about that makes me wonder how that will fit in with what I see is going on there at the old county courthouse. Is there any kind of connection there? Or they're tearing, for those of you that haven't seen this in Roseville, they're tearing down a building right along the creek, one that has had a parking lot that has eroded and chunks of asphalt have fallen in the creek over the years, and it's really not too good. But is this an opportunity to do something with that, Matt?
So this project is completely focused on the environmental restoration aspect because it's from the state California Natural Resource Council. So it's completely separate. Inner workings with the city. I've talked with development services on the projects along that corridor as well. So it'll all be part of that Western Placer Stormwater Manual. So it'll all be updated. The right drainage will be there. The right environmental filtrations will be there. So any work in that area that has seen any erosion is a good thing that we're looking at right now in the city of Roseville. So not connected, but we do talk between projects there.
Okay.
Greg, I could show that box now.
You sure what?
I can show what those boxes look like that Cecile was describing.
Okay.
So I'll switch over to my screen for just a second. Okay, so you should see those now on your screens. This is what they look like. They come with a lock and key, and they come with the mounting hardware. So this is what we're again putting up 200 of them around Lake Tahoe, and they can be self-branded if you want to add your own stickers or anything like that. But get in touch with Cecile if you're interested, and she can take you forward from there. And with that, Greg, I'll switch the screen back to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's pretty, so in a more developed area, it looks like.
Well,
So,
I'd say
hey,
any place where people are fishing along trail sides, any place you're finding accumulation of cigarette butts, these tend to prevent them from being on the ground. And they keep them out of the streams, and they keep, ducks and fish from eating them.
and hey,
then,
Jim Hoffler here. I had a question. Can you hear me?
I can, but Cecile's probably the more appropriate person to answer it. I'm happy to help. I just help facilitate, and I worked with Cecile on another project, but she knows a lot more about the KAB side of how this all works.
So I will tee up the question to both of you at the same time. Is there something inside that little hole at the top of the box that would prevent that box from becoming a bird trap?
Cecile, can you answer that? I haven't seen one in person.
There are some in some locations where they have been able to put a screening inside of it. There's kind of a retrofit if it ends up being a question or issue. It's a very small hole, so it's unlikely that a bird, a very small size. The hole looks larger, I think, in that picture than it actually is. When you push it through, it's really designed just to fit the cigarette butt in.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Matt, for that update on the Roseville project too.
Of course, Greg, no problem.
So then the next couple bullets are a couple of projects that have sort of dropped out of my sight. I don't know if they've dropped out of all people's sight during this last year, and I just wonder what's going on with them, and if there's anyone on the line that can tell us anything about them. The one is the I was hoping that Rich Mull would be on, and I don't think he is. But that was a related project to the stewardship and citizen science project, which was to do some mapping of trash. And also, I can find out more from Rich about that and report next time. And then there was another one that was related to the IRWMP and had to do with providing sanitary services to unhoused people. And I'm just curious if anyone knows anything about that one. If not, we'll just move on. We're just about finished.
So this is Dirk from Citrus Heights. I don't have a comment on those two, but to follow up on the Dry Creek restoration discussion, and not on that project in particular, because I'm just not familiar with it, but a chunk of that discussion was on the permitting. And so I can appreciate the challenges of the permitting. A suggestion for people that are potentially considering projects within a local jurisdiction, you might reach out to the local jurisdiction because some jurisdictions have what's called a routine maintenance agreement. So the city of Citrus Heights has one. I think Rancho does as well. I'm not sure about other agencies, but it's basically pre-permitted. So we went through the process a couple years ago to do all of our environmental review for a suite of maintenance activities, and they're fairly extensive. So the city has used it several times in working with smaller groups to do projects along creeks that were beneficial to the creek. And so there have been others where, you know, people have contacted us and it wasn't a good fit, and so we're able to pass that along fairly quickly. But and in general, we just refer it to our contact with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, who manages the permit. But there are a suite of activities that do allow work in the creeks without additional permitting. There's a little form and application that has to be done, but it's pretty minor. So.
Yeah, I would add to that as well, Matt, again from the city of Roseville. We do have a routine maintenance agreement, and I've used it on a couple other projects. It really depends on the scope and the type of project. I've kind of used that as much as I could on some other projects, but that one only encompasses CDFW jurisdictions. So there's a lot of overlaying jurisdictions that people have to be aware of when they are doing projects that include other agencies. So that it will take care of one permit, but you might have 2 or 3 other ones that you have to process as well. So just be wary.
I thought ours had pre-review for Corps and Water Board as well. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Just off of my last experience of one that I did this past fall, I had CDFW approval, and then I also had to go get a letter from the Flood Control District, Army Corps, and Water Board. So that's just my personal experience. It could be the type of project I was doing as well. So that's why I was just saying be wary.
Okay.
Yeah, the routine maintenance agreements are specific to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It does not include Corps and other regulatory agencies.
So good information. We're down to number 9, which is announcements, and just want to make sure that everybody is aware that these nonprofits have to have boards of directors, and we have to have volunteer directors for these, and most of us have a requirement to turn these positions over ever so often. So we always need people to volunteer to be on the board of director could be for Dry Creek Conservancy, Valley Foothill Watersheds Collaborative. Probably should I don't know, Alta, if why we didn't add Sac Area Creeks Council. Maybe you're doing fine right now, but if you are, you still will need some.
No, I could. Yeah, we need more. Yeah, more board members.
Okay. So I know sometimes it's not possible for local government staff to do that, but for others, consider, spending some time and maybe moving your agenda at work along with a nonprofit. And if you have other acquaintances or other people that you think might be interested or would be good, please try and keep us in mind for that. We're always looking for that.
Yeah, and I'd say Jim Hoffler here with Friends of Auburn Ravine. We offer all of our board members long hours, no pay, and miserable conditions.
Really a good incentive.
That'll bring them in for sure.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for that. That's just Auburn Ravine where they do that. There's other things going on that I didn't get on here, and if anybody has anything that they want to announce, please do. One that I just noticed in the last couple of days that looked like it could possibly be of interest to this group was Regional Board Strategic Planning Workshop, which I think is coming up in the next few days. I haven't looked into it in depth, but it seems like there might be some parts of that some of us would be could inject some of our own concerns into that one. I think it might be this week, or it couldn't be this week. It must be next.
It's this week. It's tomorrow morning.
It's tomorrow morning. Okay. Anything? I don't know who is this.
Sorry, this is Lisa Moretti with City of Sac. It's tomorrow morning.
Anything that would be helpful for us there?
It's really was a little bit vague, but they described it as a workshop that's being hosted by the board to do a follow-up. And I filled out the strategic planning. They did a questionnaire, and it was a lot on the priorities. So it asked kind of if you had experience, what is the regional board focusing on now? What do you think they're doing well? What do you think they could do better? If they were to, change their focus, what kind of feedback would you give them? It was kind of that level was the questionnaire that was sent out in advance. And the workshop didn't provide many other details.
All right. Well, that's good information. Thanks for telling us that. So who knows? If you have some extra time. Anything else that anyone has to announce about anything that of interest?
Yeah, Jim Hoffler here with Friends of Auburn Ravine. The draft EIR for the Hemphill Dam project is supposed to be issued by Nevada Irrigation District on April the 1st. So we'll get a chance to see the various options they're talking about to correct the problem with upstream fish passage at that location. Right now, Hemphill Dam blocks about 90% of the fish that try to get upstream from Hemphill Dam, which is about 2 miles east of Lincoln. About 90% of the fish that try to get past there do not. And in good water years, you get maybe 7 to 10% that can sometimes get past that dam. So it's a pretty serious barrier to upstream migration. And Nevada Irrigation District is working on some ideas. We'll see the details in the EIR that's coming out on April 1, and we'll have 30 to 45 days to comment on that once it is issued.
Was the community a part of the development at all, Jim?
Yes, there was a technical advisory committee that was sponsored by Cal Fish and Wildlife that provided a lot of input over the last few years. And we'll see if they liked our advice.
Anything else?
That's all I had.
All right, then. How about any future agenda items? The next meeting would be June 17th. I've been trying to get invitations out to people. Not sure how successful I am with that, but I do get things back, so it must be working for a lot of people. And
so,
yeah.
So, hey, Greg, Jim Hoffler again. So, yeah, when you ask that question, makes me think that it might be good to invite a woman named Mona Bass, first name Mona, M-O-N-A, last name Bass, B-A-S-S. She's with the Make a Difference Committee, the creek cleanup team in Lincoln, and they've been doing a great job for the last couple of years cleaning up that little creek. And hearing all the other good work going on, I thought it might be good to have her on the line next time you do one of these meetings. She can talk about what they're doing up there.
Can you send me your email, Jim?
I sure will. Thank you.
No, so the next meeting is scheduled for June 17th. The meetings are quarterly, fourth Thursday. Unfortunately, it conflicts with the invasive work group in Sac County. So I hope that we can correct that in the future. Probably, I probably wouldn't want to try and change our meetings at this point because it's, you know, you guys are all pretty committed to things, and if we've got you on a schedule, I'd like to keep it that way for now, but we'll have to make sure we don't do that next time. I think that's about all that I have to do here today. Any comments before we close it? Thank you very much for participating in it. It's good to hear from all of you again. I hope to get to see you sometime.
Thank you, Greg. And I'll add that I have one presentation posted on the website, and we'll post the other and any other information that Greg would like me to post by tomorrow, and can send a link out to all attendees. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody else.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.